Well, while the intensive winter grazing regulations may take some time to bed in, it's worth taking a longer term view of where we want to be as a country, balancing our climate change targets, our water quality aspirations, and our vulnerability on producing domestically our feed for our livestock, as well as imported feed. Joining us now is Farmlands Head of Nutrition and Animal Health, Dr. Rob Derrick, with his wealth of knowledge on alternative feed options and supplementary feed in our current management practices, but also what a reduction on nitrogen inputs, part of the freshwater rules, will have as a flow-on effect. Thank you so much, Rob, for taking the time to join us here. I had the pleasure of learning from you at AgFest when we had a Farmlands panel around the embracing change going forward, and I learnt certainly a lot more around alternative feed options. I thought it would be an ideal opportune time to have those conversations whilst we have the ongoing effect of the freshwater rules coming into play on the 1st of May. Could you set the scene for us around what you're seeing at the moment in your role as farmers try to understand how they will produce more from less?
I think there's just certainly a big concern or a move towards being more sustainable. And I think when we think about sustainability, we've got to think that sustainability occurs at different levels. There's financial sustainability of the farmers, so they need to make profits or they're not going to be there to produce some milk. There's a nutritional sustainability for the consumers that are eating the diet. They want a product which will support well-being in terms of body and mind. We've got to think about sustainability in terms of the Paris Agreement, which calls for a reduction in greenhouse gases, but not at the expense of food production, because the global population is forecast to increase from nearly 8 billion to 10 billion in the next 30 years. And we know that discerning customers want good animal welfare and less pollution. So with all these factors going on, there's lots of things for farmers to think about. And that's why I'm pleased that Farmers has set up this new growth and innovation team, and we're looking sort of 4 or 5 years out to try to give farmers the information they need to take things forward.
I want to start with the nitrogen cap. So 190 kilos of nitrogen per hectare is what the new rules are. But with this becomes a lost feed situation that has to come from somewhere. How do you believe that will have a flow-on effect to ensure that we maintain the right nutrient levels within our dairy herd?
I think there's lots of things that farmers can do, and as a cooperative, we're helping farmers to adapt to the nitrogen cap, which only looks like it's going to affect about 15% of farmers nationwide. So it's not spread evenly across the country, but certainly in those regions where higher rates of nitrogen have been used, the farmers have got a wide range of options to try to mitigate that, such as in some cases people might just be using nitrogen not very efficiently, using it at the wrong time of year and using it and not getting a very good response. On the pasture side, we've got mitigation techniques like N-boost and gibberellic acid to try to boost grass growth. But if people do cut back on fertiliser nitrogen, it does equate to a loss in dry matter production. If we still want to feed the world and produce the same amount of milk, you can't get more out than you put in. So one option is to fill that gap with imported feeds. And I think that's quite a legitimate use. It's almost like recycling. We're basically using byproducts from the human food industry and from biofuel production. And the more and more I look at it, I see that New Zealand is probably one of the best places on the world to keep cows. The environment we've got, the ability to grow grass, is just second to none. So we are very efficient, but we know that by feeding those cows to sustain high levels of production, we can actually get better efficiency in terms of greenhouse gas, the carbon footprint per kilogram of milk solids. So I think we need to be quite open that importing byproducts that are produced in parts of the world, such as soya hulls from South America, it's a very good environment for growing soya. It's not so good for milking cows. And it's the same in New Zealand. We can't grow soya bean because it's not really hot enough, but it's an ideal environment to keep cows, which have got a rumen, which is basically like a central heating boiler inside the body. So they don't cope very well with heat stress. So I think going forward, the case will be made stronger and stronger that feeding cows to support milk production can be good for both the cow, the farmer, and the environment.
What about our vulnerability of moving to more alternative feed options than pasture, grain, palm kernel, soy husks, and particularly, say, for instance, with grain in our mission here in the arable industry to produce, 100% sustainability around our wheat for bread. And the effect that will have on animal feed and grains into the livestock industry, the sort of consumer trend around the use of palm kernel and Fonterra's stance on that as well. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that shipping products around the world in bulk ships is very efficient. You can take product a long way on a ship because it's on water. It's a very efficient mode of transport. And I think greenhouse gases are global. The greenhouse gases we produce will have affect other people elsewhere in the world. And it's logical to think of the globe as an entity. And if we can make use of byproducts from around the world and use them in a very efficient farming system, then I think that makes sense. But there will be more and more competition. We're seeing China is getting more dairy cows and they're paying more now for some of these byproducts. So it is a competitive environment. But I think because we've got such an efficient pasture-based system, we should be able to buy those traits at the level that they're making on the world market. And vice versa for the grain growers. Farmlands has got 2 feed mills. We support a lot of shareholders that produce grain. We put it into the feed industry. That grain probably won't be sold at global prices. We can't compete against the big Australian wheat growers and the North American wheat growers. So I think we need a diverse farming system. And that's one of the things about Farmlands. We're very agnostic. We'll support shareholders, whatever they want to do. If they want to grow hops, or if they want to grow kiwi fruit, we will try to support that. And I think a mixed farming system is great going forward because it spreads the risk and it plays to our strengths. And if kiwi fruit grows better in the Bay of Plenty, particularly if it gets warmer, and dairy cows are more efficient in Southland, then it makes sense that we might see more cows in Southland and more kiwi fruit in the Bay of Plenty. If Northland can grow bananas and people want to pay for bananas, then we'll see more bananas being grown. So that sustainability is an economic thing, and the economics will determine what farmers do. But ultimately, the world wants food, and I think we've got to be very a little bit more vocal that our dairy products are part of a healthy, nutritious diet that is good for people all around the world, really. And that's why people are paying a premium for our milk. I'm not sure if that's answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot more of a wider global view of our food systems and how they're also integrated, and how by New Zealand having its own domestic regulations, it's not that straightforward. So no, you definitely did answer that. Thank you. And when it comes...
continuous intensive cereal cropping is not great for the soil. So when people talk about regenerative farming, the beauty of a pasture-based system is that grass is seen as a way forward to capture carbon from the atmosphere and put it back into the soil. And as part of a rotation, arable crops and long-term grassland is a great option. Yeah. So I'm really encouraged that what we're doing ticks a lot of the boxes going forward.
Fair point, absolutely. Before you go, I just want to talk about the rise in maize silage and lifted fodder beet domestically produced in New Zealand, and the balance that we're getting around making sure that we have the right nutrition and cow condition in New Zealand, and what your advice and thoughts are on how we can balance, the intensive winter grazing systems that we have across the country and our environmental outcomes, as well as ensuring that we don't lose our nutritional outcomes as well.
I think New Zealand dairy farmers are doing a lot right. I think they're doing a superb job, but with everything, you can always do a little bit better. And I think crops like fodder beet are a very high yielding crop, produce a high yield of dry matter, and they do have a great ability to put cow condition on. So it has been a great solution. But with the intensive winter grazing reforms, that acreage might have to be pared back a bit. If farmers can only grow 10% of the farm, we might see that particularly some of the winter graziers that are focused on winter grazing dry cows won't be able to grow so much fodder beet. So if we're looking at less fodder beet, which has been doing a good job, what's the alternative? And my focus really is on feeding the cows in mid to late lactation to support milk production, but also body condition. So the good thing about dairy cows, if you feed them for extra milk production, it increases appetite. And if they've got a higher appetite, when they come to petition energy on the back, they petition a bigger slice of that dry matter intake onto weight gain. So you can literally have your cake and eat it too in terms of feeding cows. So we tend to find that people that feed the cows more supplements in mid to late lactation, they've got cows in better condition and they produce more milk. The key thing with cows is you've got to dry them off with a view to the condition of calving. So calving condition is paramount to the season ahead. So if you can dry your cows off in better condition, you've got a shorter dry period. So inevitably there's going to be less need for dry cow feeds, whether that be fodder beet or winter grazing. And while the cow's milking, you're also putting milk in the vat, which is generating profit. So more and more surveys are showing that supplementary feeding is good for the farmer's bank balance and it's good for the cow. So it's a win-win all round. And the other thing is that when you look at greenhouse gases, there was a survey in 2017-18 that showed the top 25% of farmers surveyed in terms of greenhouse gases per kilogram of milk solids use more supplementary feed than the lower quartile. And it's not necessarily cause and effect, but basically what that survey shows is that you can feed cows high level of supplements and have a lower carbon footprint. So it's a win-win all round really, in terms of profitability, the environment and the cow. Because a cow that's in better condition, that calves down in the right condition, is more likely to have less metabolic issues, she's more likely to get pregnant, and she's more likely to have a longer life in the herd.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's Dr. Rob Derrick there. So what I'm hearing is that there is a lot of efficiencies that we haven't quite found just yet that have a great flow-on effect all round, and their alternative supplementary feeds is all part of a balanced diet, and it also is one of the major answers to the changes we're seeing to our intensive winter grazing regulations. So, absolutely appreciate your time. Dr. Rob Derrick there, the head of animal nutrition at Farmlands Cooperative.
Oh, nice boots.
Yeah, thanks. They're new.
Ben, you alright?
Oh, yeah, sorry mate. Just meerkatting pretty hard, eh? Yeah, I just said to myself, Ben, you work hard, you deserve new boots.